Hi guys, Lopti here, and as usual I have failed to make videos for like forever, so I'm sorry. However, today I'm making this video to talk about a topic that I usually don't really talk about online. That would be my aneurysm rupture and the entire situation surrounding it. I'm partially influenced by Amelia Clark and her recent willingness to discuss her situation with her aneurysms, but also because April 15th will be the 3-year anniversary, or as my family likes to call it, anniversary of my rupture. And leading up to that time, I'm usually a little more thoughtful and reflective on everything that I went through and how it's made me who I am now. Here we go. On April 15th of 2016, I was out to lunch with some coworkers, and I was sitting there, we were talking about like visiting Kings Island and stuff, and I felt awesome. And then suddenly I didn't. It felt like, it's hard to even compare it to a headache because it's so much worse than a headache. It was the worst pain I'd ever felt here in the front of my head, and then it felt kind of like there was a knife stuck in the back of my neck, and this is a really weird thing, but it felt like my ears were like getting sucked into my head. I thought I was gonna pass out or throw up. It was just out of nowhere, like blink of the eye, total change. So I told my coworkers that I needed to get to the hospital, and once I was there, I let the people at the front desk know that I had what's called a thunderclap headache, which is where it comes like straight out of nowhere. I also let them know that my aunt had died of a brain aneurysm rupture. Hers was pretty much immediate, so as soon as it ruptured, she was gone basically. So they rushed me back and they did scans. They found the aneurysm had ruptured, and I got taken by ambulance. I arrived at the hospital that was going to do the procedure, and I'm laying on the table, and it's very strange how your mindset changes when you're that close to death. Because I remember I used to be scared of like everything, and then I was laying there and I was just like, well, I guess this is it, you know? And the doctor came in and let me know that there would be about a 40% chance that I would die during the surgery, and probably about another 40% chance that I would die the week following. And if I didn't die, I would probably be paralyzed. Luckily, none of that happened, and I'm still here to tell the tale. But that's how serious these ruptures are when it happens. You have such a little amount of time to respond, if you can even respond at all. So when I got there, they said I had probably about 2 hours before I would have been dead. So I was put under for the surgery. And the first surgery I had was an endovascular surgery, which is where they go in through an artery in your leg and then up through your aorta and into your brain, and they actually coil it. And that is these little tiny titanium strings come out, and they basically make a little ball to fill the area where the aneurysm ruptured. And the titanium, it helps make the blood clot, and it'll stop the bleeding. So they were hoping that would be the only surgery I would need, which ended up not being the case, but it was definitely the best first step to at least get the bleeding stopped before they actually had to open my head. When I woke up, I had people asking me all kinds of neurological questions, you know, can you wiggle your toes? Okay, what do you remember? What do you see? How many fingers? All kinds of stuff. Basically testing how much of me there still was, and I think everyone's really pleased by how well I responded, even right there from the beginning. But that was just the beginning of the whole thing. I was in ICU for about 2.5 weeks, and multiple times they told my family basically to prepare for the worst. There are these things called vasospasms. And after you've had an aneurysm rupture and a stroke, these vasospasms, it's like the vessels in your brain want to constrict, and when they do to that extreme, it basically stops all blood flow and everything to your brain, and it causes extreme brain damage and death. So they did these tests on me every day where they had to press into my skull with this thing, and you could hear the different blood vessels. Depending on those results, they could tell if I was probably very likely to have a vasospasm or if I was pretty decent. And one day they were pretty sure that I was going to have significant problems, but that didn't end up happening. My family prayed for me like crazy, and the next day when they expected it to occur, it was a miracle. The doctors really were like, wow, you've improved so much overnight, and they didn't really have an answer for how that could have happened. Even one of my neurosurgeons told me that God had to have some kind of work for me in my future because I wouldn't be alive otherwise. My hospital stay was a whole lot of throwing up, tons of medication, some hallucinations, very strange things you see when you're that out of it, and plus brain damage, you know. But my family never left me alone, and that was amazing. Someone was always there with me, and I was extremely blessed to have them all there. I also had to do a lot of physical therapy while there, so they would like tie these ropes around my waist basically, and 2 nurses would be on my side and help me walk, and then ask me like, you know, walk with my toes one after another, basically teaching me how to stably walk on my own again. Luckily, I wasn't as bad as a lot of people who actually have to completely learn, like taking every little step again. I was out of work for, I think it was like 4 months, and then part-time for a while. But then that October, when they went in to do another angiogram, which is kind of a nightmare, they found that the titanium coils that they put in to stop the bleeding were starting to compact. So when they would compact, they would eventually let the aneurysm rupture again, basically. So they decided to go ahead and do the full craniotomy. October 10th is also a special date for me because it's the day I got my head cracked open. And that was an experience in and of itself. I remember previously, before my rupture and all, I never would have thought I would survive having my head cut open. But then somehow you find the power, you know? And it was scary as all get out, but I was just like, well, this has to happen. We had some very interesting videos of when they had to pull a tube out of my head, and it just kept coming, and then they stapled up my head, and I'm awake this whole time, so that was interesting. So following the craniotomy, I think I was back in the hospital for like almost a week probably, and then off work again for probably another 2 months. I have a super cool scar. It starts from here and goes all the way to right here in front of my ear, and you can't see it because of my hair, but it's like really cool. And I have this silly desire to like shave part of my head here just to show it off, because, you know, I think I could be like a cool Viking. Some questions that I get asked a lot: how did you know that it wasn't just a bad headache? Again, it didn't feel like a normal headache, and usually headaches kind of come on gradually. This thing was just like bam, out of nowhere, like a train hit me. So I knew it wasn't my usual headache, not even like a migraine, not to mention being paired with like this feeling that I was gonna pass out. There was just no way it was a normal headache. If it's the worst headache of your life, go to the hospital. If something doesn't seem right, just go to the hospital. Better safe than sorry, because again, I would have been dead in about 2 hours had I not. And the people who I had been eating lunch with, They didn't think I was very serious about the whole like I think I'm dying thing. So they're like, how about you just like go take a nap? And again, it's a really good thing I didn't do that because I wouldn't have woken up. I think it helped me knowing that my aunt had died of an aneurysm. So it can run in families. Not necessarily aneurysm forming runs in families, but if you have a genetic disposition to, say, the collagen in your veins is weaker than most people, there are lots of different kind of genetic disorders that make you more likely to develop brain aneurysms. So if you have family history of brain aneurysms, I would suggest talking to your doctor and seeing if you can get signed up for an MRA. That's an MRI but with the contrast, and they need that contrast to see all the vessels in your brain and be able to see if any are ballooning out. I highly recommend it. I made sure my sister went and got tested and she's good, so that's awesome. But also from now on, every year I have a slight increased risk of developing a new one. So it's going to be watching very carefully for the rest of my life. Lots of MRAs and angiograms. It's gonna be interesting. Another question I hear a lot is if I have any long-term effects. Yes. Even though I was extremely fortunate not to end up, paralyzed or anything like that, my situation could have been so much worse with what happened. But I'm a little slower, like my words don't come out a lot of times. Sometimes I stutter. It's like my brain gets stuck. I'm tired all the time. I used to not be that way at all. I also stopped being able to sleep, so now I have to take medication to make me sleep. I've also had some really silly situations where my brain just kind of burps. Like I'd get a full plate of food and then I'd stick the full plate of food in the dishwasher, or I leave my keys in the door all the time. You put your phone in the refrigerator. Just a lot of that, and it's silly sometimes, and I have to apologize for sorry, I got brain damage. I also find that I've become more of a bold person, just like things I wouldn't have had the courage to say to people before, and now it just kind of blew out. That can be a good thing and also kind of a weird thing, because sometimes you don't want those inside words to come out, but they do. Some silly things that bother people who've had aneurysm ruptures or any kind of brain damage. When people say, so are you back to 100% now? We're like, no, I'm like totally a different person now because something life-changing has happened to me. I don't think there ever is a 100% for people who have brain damage. It's just learning to live with your new norm, and that's okay too. It just takes a lot of work. And shortly after a rupture, a lot of people find themselves mourning who they used to be. It's a big change that you have to really work through. Another weird thing is when people are like, don't let this define you. Even though it doesn't define who I am, it is a huge part of how I came to be the me that I am now. People sometimes ask how much metal I have in my head and if I make metal detectors go off. The answer is I have a ton of metal in my head. I've got like 2 plates, I've got the coiling that was originally put in, and then the 2 clips, and then the screws and all. And it's kind of, I don't know if you can see it, but there's this like really big divot here. That's just where one of the plates ends, I think. But no, I don't set off metal detectors, and that's because titanium, it's medical grade titanium, so it doesn't get detected. I also want to extend a thank you to all the people who have taken care of people who have brain damage. We know we can be difficult sometimes, but it's so appreciated. Like my family, they took such great care of me. I'll never forget taking little therapeutic walks with my dad through Air Force Museum, or my mom coming over and playing with my hair really gently while we watch Gotham. They're amazing. I'm so thankful that I'm still here and I get to spend more time with them, and also with my husband and my stepdaughter. I'm just blown away by my family's response and how wonderful they've been to me. And it is so critical to have that support team in your life if you're going through something like this. I hope you all can forgive me for failing to make videos as often as I used to. It takes so much mental work for me now just to put these words together that it takes a lot out of me. I'm gonna try to be better and check in with y'all more often. And I've been using Instagram a lot more recently just because it's so easy. It's like a click and things are posted. So check me out there. And as always, you can find me on Facebook. Leave me a comment below if you have any more questions about brain aneurysms. I'll try my best to reply to them as quickly as I can, and maybe even make a follow-up video if I have enough questions to address. Thank you all so much. I've loved having your support over the years, and I just can't thank y'all enough. I will see you again soon.